The smell of salt and old wood, of sun-baked linens and the faint, sweet decay of marsh grass. That was the smell of my sanctuary. My beach house on Tybee Island, Georgia. I was sitting on its creaking porch swing, watching the last sliver of a tangerine sunset dissolve into the Atlantic when my daughter, Clara, called. "Mom," she said, her voice unusually clipped. "We're going tomorrow. I've sold the beach house." My world, usually as steady and predictable as the tides, lurched violently. Before I could even gasp, she added, "And don't worry, I handled everything. You won't have to lift a finger." But what she didn't know was that I'd already lifted a few fingers of my own fingers, tracing the outline of a secret that would unravel her entire scheme. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you tuning in from? It helps to feel connected, even when your own world is falling apart. My name is Eleanor Vance. Yes, the same Eleanor from Charleston whose granddaughter was nearly starved. After that whole ordeal, my life took a quiet turn. I'd sold the Palmetto House Inn, wanting a simpler life, more time for myself, and, more importantly, for Lily. We moved to this little beach house on Tybee, a place I'd inherited from my eccentric Aunt Beatrice decades ago. It wasn't grand, but it was steeped in memories, a haven where the rhythm of the waves soothed old wounds. I was a retired innkeeper, a grandmother cherishing her second chance at peace. My daughter, Clara, was my firstborn, my golden girl, or so I thought. She was a high-powered real estate agent in Atlanta, all designer suits and ambition. She'd always had a knack for making things happen, for getting what she wanted. It was a trait I admired mostly. But after the incident with Kevin and Maya, my senses were heightened. I saw shadows where I used to see light. The beach house was my last significant asset, apart from a small trust fund I held for Lily. Clara knew this. She also knew that the house, while charming, was old and in need of some major repairs. A new roof, updated plumbing, a battle against the relentless salt air. I'd mentioned these looming expenses to her a few times, wondering aloud if it was time to sell. Clara, however, had always dismissed it. "Oh, Mom, you love that place. Don't even think about it. You deserve your little slice of paradise." Her sudden, decisive phone call about the sale was completely out of character. And the way she said, "I handled everything." It felt like a door slamming shut, not opening. That night, the rhythmic crash of the waves felt less like comfort and more like a countdown. Clara had been vague about the details. What price? Who was the buyer? Why hadn't she discussed it with me, the owner? My mind, now finely tuned to the scent of betrayal, went into overdrive. I remembered Aunt Beatrice, bless her eccentric soul. She was a fiercely independent woman, a formidable artist who trusted very few people. She had loved this house fiercely. I suddenly recalled a casual comment she'd made years ago, something about making sure my little slice of heaven stayed mine. A faint, almost forgotten memory, but enough to prick my unease. I pulled out the old, dusty deed box from the back of the linen closet. Inside, nestled amongst yellowed photographs and dried pressed flowers, was the original deed to the beach house, and attached to it, a separate, heavier parchment, a trust agreement. Aunt Beatrice, in her infinite wisdom and distrust of, well, almost everyone, had put the beach house into a qualified personal residence trust, QPRT. It was a complex legal instrument, designed to transfer ownership of a residence, usually to heirs, while allowing the grantor to live there for a specified term. The twist? I was the grantor, and the beneficiaries were my direct lineal descendants, meaning Clara and, crucially, Lily, equally. But the term of my occupancy was for life, or until I chose to sell. And more importantly, Clara had absolutely no authority to sell it without my express, written consent, witnessed and notarized. The document was clear as day. Clara's sale was entirely fraudulent. My hands trembled as I read the fine print. This wasn't just my house. It was part of Lily's inheritance, too. My daughter, the high-powered real estate agent, wasn't just selling my home. She was trying to steal a significant portion of her own daughter's future. The shock was a cold wave, followed by a familiar burning anger. Clara, my golden girl, was rotten to the core. If you've ever had that gut-wrenching realization that someone you love is not who you thought they were, hit that like button. It's a pain like no other. I called my trusted attorney, Margaret, who by now was less an attorney and more a co-conspirator in my family drama. I sent her copies of the QPRT documents. She was quiet for a long moment, then let out a low whistle. "Eleanor, this is something else," Margaret said, her voice tight with professional concern. "A QPRT. Beatrice was a genius. Clara literally cannot sell this house without your signature. A fraudulent sale of this magnitude, especially by a licensed real estate agent. That's career suicide minimum. Potentially criminal depending on how far she's gone." "She's gone far, Margaret. She said we're going tomorrow." Meaning, she's arranged for movers, probably already has a buyer lined up, and she just told me, not asked me. My voice was flat. The pain was still there, but it was encased in a shell of pure strategic clarity. "Do you know who the supposed buyer is?" Margaret asked. "No, but I have a guess," I said, remembering Clara's recent obsession with investment properties and how she always talked about turning a quick profit. I hung up with Margaret and got to work. My first call was to the Tybee Island city clerk's office. I explained, without giving too many details, that I suspected a fraudulent transaction was attempting to be made on my property. They were hesitant at first, but the mention of a QPRT and a licensed real estate agent attempting an illegal sale quickly got their attention. They flagged the property for any incoming title transfers or sale documents, promising to alert me immediately if anything crossed their desk. My next step was to find out who the supposed buyer was. I knew Clara used a specific title company in Atlanta for all her high-end deals. It was a long shot, but I used my old innkeeper charm, calling them up and pretending to be a concerned relative of the buyer, trying to surprise them with a housewarming gift for their new beach home. It was risky, but the receptionist, a sweet young woman, inadvertently confirmed my suspicions. "Oh, you mean for the Vance property?" "Yes, Mrs. Chen is very excited. The closing is set for, well, I shouldn't say, but it's very soon." Mrs. Chen. My intuition, sharp as a sea glass shard, told me this wasn't some innocent third party. Clara's husband, David, was a major investor in a chain of boutique hotels, and Chen was his business partner. Clara wasn't just selling my house. She was likely selling it to an associate of her husband's, probably at an artificially low price, to be flipped for a massive profit. A profit that would completely bypass me and, more importantly, bypass Lily's half of the inheritance. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a complex financial fraud. My phone rang. It was the city clerk's office. "Mrs. Vance," the voice on the other end was urgent. "Documents just came through. A quitclaim deed, supposedly signed by you, transferring ownership to a shell corporation called Tybee Sands Holdings LLC. It was just filed, and it looks like the notary public, well, they've retired and moved out of state a year ago." My blood ran cold. She hadn't just faked my consent. She had forged my signature and used a defunct notary. This was a felony. Clara had crossed a line she could never uncross. The shell corporation was a classic move to obscure the true ownership before flipping it. My daughter was trying to steal my house and Lily's inheritance, laundered through her husband's connections. I called Margaret back. "It's worse than we thought. She forged my signature, and she used a shell company." Margaret swore under her breath. "Okay, Eleanor. This changes everything. We're not just stopping a sale. We're talking criminal charges. Fraud, forgery. This is going to destroy her career and possibly her life. Are you ready for that? I looked out at the waves, thinking of Maya's small, trembling hand. She tried to steal from Lily, I said, my voice as steady as the horizon. I'm ready. The next morning, Clara arrived with a team of movers. She looked impeccably chic in a cream linen suit, supervising the packing. She strode up to me, a forced smile plastered on her face. "Morning, Mom. Isn't this exciting? New beginnings." I held up a hand. "Before you start, Clara, there's something we need to discuss." She rolled her eyes. "Mom, please, don't be difficult. The buyers are flying in this afternoon to do a final walkthrough." Just then, 2 cars pulled into the driveway. One was Margaret's Lexus. The other was a black sedan with official county seals on its doors. 2 stern-faced deputies stepped out, followed by a man in a suit I recognized as a representative from the Georgia Real Estate Commission. Clara's face went from annoyed to utterly bewildered. "Mom, what is this?" Margaret stepped forward, a file in her hand. "Clara, as Eleanor's legal counsel, I'm here to inform you that the sale of this property, 123 Pelican's Perch Lane, is illegal and fraudulent. You have forged your mother's signature on a quitclaim deed, which, given the existence of a qualified personal residence trust, holds no legal standing." Clara gasped, her eyes wide with terror, finally realizing the depth of the trap she had walked into. She looked at me, her mouth agape. "Mom, what are you talking about?" The Real Estate Commission representative stepped forward. "Ms. Vance, due to the evidence of fraud and forgery related to this attempted transaction, your real estate license is immediately suspended, pending a full investigation. This could lead to permanent revocation and criminal charges." Then the deputies spoke. "Ms. Vance, you need to step away from the property. Any further attempts to move contents or interfere with the legal ownership will be met with arrest for trespassing and attempted grand theft." Clara stood frozen, her designer suit suddenly looking like a cheap costume. The movers, sensing the shift in atmosphere, started quietly packing their trucks back up. Clara's meticulously constructed world imploded in a single, devastating moment, right there on the sandy driveway of the house she thought she'd stolen. Her face twisted from shock to a venomous hatred. "You did this, Mom? You ruined me?" I looked at my daughter, this stranger who had tried to steal from her own mother and her own child. "You ruined yourself, Clara," I said, my voice clear and unwavering, "when you chose greed over family." The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle whisper of the waves, a soundtrack to her undoing. The aftermath was a long, painful process. Clara's real estate license was permanently revoked, and she faced a federal investigation for fraud and forgery. She lost everything: her career, her reputation, and eventually, her marriage as David distanced himself from her legal troubles. I never pressed criminal charges. Losing her career and the respect of everyone who knew her was punishment enough. The beach house remains my sanctuary. It still needs a new roof, but now, every repair is a quiet act of defiance, a reclaiming of what's truly mine. The QPRT was amended, with Clara's share of the beneficiaries legally removed, ensuring that Lily would receive her full inheritance, untainted by her mother's greed. I still talk to Clara sometimes. Our conversations are stiff, strained, an empty echo of what we once were. I don't know if we'll ever truly reconcile. But I've learned that sometimes, loving your children means holding them accountable, even when it shatters the image of the family you thought you had. I chose to protect the future, for Lily, even if it meant sacrificing the past with Clara. And as the sun sets over the ocean, painting the sky with colors as vibrant as the life I'm choosing to live, I find a new kind of peace. It's not the peace of ignorance, but the quiet strength of truth. If this story hit home, hit the like button, comment 1 below, and share your own story of difficult family choices. And please, subscribe for more. Thank you for being here.